Hi, I wanted to go ahead and read to you the first page or so of The Lives of the Dead. Okay. But this too is true. Stories can save us. And I want you guys to think about that sentence. So how can stories save us? What does that mean? Stories can save us. I'm 43 years old and a writer now, and even still, right here, I keep dreaming Linda alive, and Ted Lavender too, and Kiowa, and Kurt Lemon, and a slim young man I killed, and an old man sprawned beside a pig pen, and several others whose bodies I once lifted and dumped into a truck. They're all dead. But in a story which is kind of dreaming, the dead sometimes smile and sit up and return to the world. How would they do that? Think about that, you guys. How would they do that? Is it through memory? Is it like, are they ghosts? So kind of think about what could he mean by the dead sometimes smile and sit up and return to the world. Start here, a body without a name. On an afternoon in 1969, the platoon took sniper fire from a filthy little village along the South China Sea. It lasted only a minute or two, and nobody was hurt, but even so, Lieutenant Jimmy Cross got on the radio and ordered up an airstrike. For the next half an hour, we watched the place burn. It was a cool, bright morning, like early autumn, and the jets were glossy black against the sky. When it ended, we formed into a loose line and swept east through the village. It was all wreckage. I remember the smell of burnt straw. I remember broken fences and torn up trees and heaps of stone and brick and pottery. The place was deserted, no people, no animals, and the only confirmed kill was an old man who lay face up near a pig pen at the center of the village. His right arm was gone. At his face there was already many flies and gnats. Dave Jensen went over and shook the old man's hand. "Howdy do," he said. One by one, the others did it too. They didn't disturb the body, they just grabbed the old man and offered a few words and moved away. Rat Kiley bent over the corpse. "Give me 5," he said. "A real honor. Please just punch," said Henry Dobbins. I was brand new to the war. It was my 4th day. I hadn't yet developed a sense of humor. Right away, as if I'd swallowed something, I felt a moist sickness rise up in my throat. I sat down beside the pig pen, closed my eyes, put my head between my knees. After a moment, Dave Jensen touched my shoulder. "Be polite now," he said. "Go introduce yourself. Nothing to be afraid of. Just a nice old man. Show a little respect for your elders." "No way. Maybe it's too real for you." "That's right," I said. "Way too real." Jensen kept after me, but I didn't go near the body. I didn't even look at it except by accident. For the rest of the day, there was still that sickness inside me, but it wasn't the old man's corpse so much. It was that awesome act of greeting the dead. At one point, I remember, they sat the body up against a fence. They crossed his legs and talked to him. "The guest of honor," Mitchell Sanders said, and placed a can of orange slices in the old man's lap. "Vitamin C," he said gently. "A guy's health, that's the most important thing." They proposed toasts. They lifted their canteens and drank to the old man's family and ancestors, like many grandchildren, his newfound life after death. It was more than mockery. There was a formality to it, like a funeral without the sadness. So think about, why would they do that? I mean, sometimes it's just kind of getting through. Death is not pleasant. Death is hard to look at, to actualize. So, is it just a coping mechanism for, being in that situation? Um, it's not just kind of that they have no feeling. That is for sure. Dave Jensen flicked his eyes at me. "Hey, O'Brien," he said, "you got a toast in mind? Never too late for manners." I found things to do with my hands. I looked away and tried not to think. Late in the afternoon, just before dusk, Kiowa came up and asked if he could sit in my foxhole for a moment. He offered me a Christmas cookie from a batch his father had sent him. It was February now, but the cookies tasted fine. After a few moments, Kiowa watched the sky. "You did a good thing today," he said. "That shaking hands crap, it isn't decent." The guys that hassle you for a while, especially Jensen, but just keep on saying no. Should have done it myself. Takes guts, I know that. It wasn't guts, I was scared. Kiowa shrugged. Same difference. No, I couldn't do it. A mental block or something. I don't know. Just creepy. Well, you're new here. You'll get used to it. He paused for a second, studying the green and red sprinkles on a cookie. Today, I guess this was your first look at real body. I shook my head. All day long, I've been picturing Linda's face, the way she smiled. It sounds funny, I said, but the poor old man he reminds me of, there's this girl I used to know. I took her to the movies once, my first date. Kyle looked at me for a long time, then he leaned back and smiled. Man, he said, that's a bad date. Okay. Um, you guys, I'll read just a little bit more. I am kind of curious of what you think about this chapter. You'll have to tell me at some point. Linda was 9 then, as I was, but we were in love and it was real. When I write about her now, 3 decades later, it's tempting to dismiss it as a crush, infatuation, a childhood, but I know for a fact that what we felt to each other was as deep and rich as love can ever get. And all the shadings and complexities of mature adult love, and maybe more, because there was not yet words for it, because it was not yet fixed to comparisons or chronologies or the ways in which adults measure such things. I just loved her. She had poise and great dignity. Her eyes, I remember, were deep brown like her hair, and she was slender and very quiet and fragile looking. And then at 9 years old, I wanted to live inside of her body. I wanted to melt into her bones, that kind of love. So in the spring of 1956, when we were in the fourth grade, I took her out on the first real date of my life, a double date actually with my mother and father, though I can't remember the exact sequence. My mother had simply arranged it with Linda's parents, and on that damp spring night, my dad did the driving while Linda and I sat in the back seat and stared out opposite windows, both of us trying to pretend it was nothing special. For me, though, it was very special. Down inside, I had important things to tell her, profound things, but I couldn't make my words come out. I had trouble breathing. Now and then I'd glance over at her, thinking how beautiful she was, her white skin and those dark brown eyes, and the way she always smiled at the world. Always it seemed, as if her face had been designed that way. The smile never went away. That night I remember she wore a new red cap, which seemed to be very stylish and sophisticated, very unusual. It was a stocking cap, basically, except the tapered part at the top seemed extra long, almost too long, like a tail growing out of the back of the head. It made me think of the caps that Santa elves wear, the same shape and color, that same fuzzy white tassel at the tip. Okay, you guys have a good week. Let me know your thoughts on this and take care. Bye bye.